In the current neoliberal era, we see that even the most basic gains of the social democratic movement, whether it is retirement security or healthcare provisions or higher education, are sacrificed for the sake of profit maximization of big businesses. Pretenses about protecting the interests of the population, whose wages and benefits are destroyed and removed, are no longer even being made. The billionaire class that wants to maintain the current irrational order for as long as possible essentially support a diversionary propaganda campaign on several different fronts, which I will examine in part. First, there is a blame the victim strategy. Ronald Reagan made a big deal out of the welfare queen who used multiple identities to bilk the government for welfare money, to convince the white working class, basically to support Ronald Reagan to become president, and also to allow him to make cuts to social welfare programs. Well, while there is some truth to the statement that, denouncing this one woman who has committed serious welfare fraud, this is the exception to the rule. Most welfare recipients are living in poverty and certainly do not relish in their situation. The conservative Republican Party took over Congress in the mid 1990s, and Bill Clinton signed the welfare reform bill into law, which converted the old welfare program into a new welfare to work scheme, which mandated welfare recipients to go to work at rock bottom wages and provide employers with a readily exploitable source of labor. In addition, lifetime benefit eligibility was tightened to 5 years. The economic impacts of the welfare cuts should not be underestimated. By forcing poor people into the labor force, it tends to push down the reservation wage, that is, the minimum wage that needs to be paid to workers in order to induce work. And so many more people crowded into the low wage sector, which further reduced opportunities for advancement for the poor. In any case, to blame the victim strategy of the powerful interests in this country cannot solve any social or economic problems. But they can rouse certain segments of the population to focus on the victims and to blame those victims. But how reasonable is it to put the victim of the robbery in jail rather than the robber? There are two more lines of division in US society that deserve special consideration, that of immigrants and African Americans. On immigrants, most of them come from Latin America and various parts of Asia, and they have created a lot of fears among the native population that jobs are going to be lost, and or that these immigrants live on the dole and milk the welfare state. But if both ideas are held simultaneously, then it is of course an internal contradiction. Because how can you milk the welfare state and at the same time, take jobs from people? This statement would make more sense among the domestic working poor, who certainly do receive subsidies from the government at the same time as working. But these are domestic and not foreign workers. For foreigners without permanent resident status or naturalized citizenship, it is not possible to receive public benefits, contrary to popular wisdom. Politicians are therefore very open to more illegal immigration, even though they won't say that explicitly because undocumented workers provide low-wage labor for their employers while at the same time paying taxes to the government and not being eligible for any benefits. Well, are immigrants going to lead to local job losses? Possibly, but I did not find any conclusive study that supports this argument. Over the short run, a large influx of workers in a particular sector will probably lead to some increase in local unemployment. But the benefits also tend to be greater because immigrants also create demand in the local economy, and that in itself supports jobs too. Well, let's look at the category of African Americans. African Americans in the US have been an oppressed and discriminated against minority. And the Ferguson, Missouri incident, where a white police officer killed an unarmed black teenager, leading to huge public outcry, is a case in point for the simmering racial tensions that are alive in US society. There have certainly been significant gains in the civil rights movement, um, and those have brought benefits to blacks since the 1960s. And the fact that many public sector jobs, city halls, and even the White House are occupied by black people can attest to those gains. But those gains are far from enough. The median white family in the US has 13 times more wealth than the median black family. The youth unemployment rate for blacks is much higher than the national average. This economic inequality has to breed social tension. When white workers are screwed by their employers, then black workers are screwed even more. They're going to be the last ones hired and first ones fired. Many black kids drop out of school and see no economic prospects ahead of them, and so they spend more time on the street. The city then sends in the police to increase monitoring of black people based on past precedent of discrimination and crime incidents. The shooting of Michael Brown became a mere matter of time, and the simmering racial tensions then come to the fore. What then happens is a confrontation taking place between whites and blacks, with whites accusing blacks of resorting to crime, welfare, and bad behavior, while blacks complain about police brutality and discrimination from whites. As Gunnar Myrdal had described in his study 70 years ago, racial tension has been the original sin in the United States and makes a more generous social policy more difficult to accomplish. But in order to ameliorate racial tensions, it is precisely necessary to create a multiracial coalition to oppose the oligarchy and demand social policies that benefit people of all races. Second, the focus on social issues. Powerful people in this country use social issues like abortion, gay marriage, gun ownership, and religion to distract the people from the economic issues confronting them. Social issues often contain a moral nature. The views that people form about those issues are very much shaped by their families, their friendship network, their co-workers, and their own personal background. Their own personal views of how society should look like. Political leaders have difficulty in adjudicating these differences in viewpoints, and I don't really find it reasonable to bring the people to make a clear and unambiguous choice here. Views, in my opinion, will naturally evolve, and policies follow societal norms with some time delay. But it's definitely a big problem that we are being distracted by these social issues rather than finding common ground on the economic issues like unemployment and poverty and inequality that certainly do make us have a common problem. Third, we should think about the factor of entertainment. There's no method that is more effective for the powerful than to have the powerless not care about politics at all. That is the ultimate highest end of diversionary strategies. Because politics is a subject that is not very easy to contemplate, and when one does it, it does take time and effort to understand it well. But it is much easier to watch mindless TV commercials and be consumers of mass media. In the Roman Empire, bread and circus was an important way of keeping the people distracted such that they don't dare to challenge economic inequality. The people need bread to survive physically, and they also need to watch gladiators kill each other on the field so they can have a good time. Today, people need to have food stamps at the very least, though that is put into question due to a Republican Congress that wants to slash even that program. But people today need food stamps and football games. So, in what sense are we different than back in the Roman Empire?